Erecting a castle in the Middle Ages was nothing like assembling a flimsy set of shelves. There was no going back if you erred. One wrong judgment didn't just lead to a crooked building, but could send a mountain of masonry crashing down. Medieval royalty learned this lesson the hard way, often right after someone eagerly insisted, "It'll be fine." For those kings, building a castle was a matter of survival, not just prestige. Their version of location had life or death stakes. Picking the spot for a fortress resembled a high-stakes chess match, where missteps could cost you far more than your fortune. Monarchs couldn't simply jab a finger at a map and proclaim, "Build it here." They had to weigh every detail: security, resources, and influence. It's a little like choosing the best seat in class, not just for a view or convenience, but for safety and power. Every angle, every approach mattered. Except in this game, the stakes were armies and invasions, not pencils and notebooks. Perched on high hills or cliffs, castles blended protection with command. From such heights, watchmen could spot approaching enemy forces long before they arrived. Defending from above was infinitely easier. Anyone who's tried hiking a steep path with a backpack can imagine the agony, let alone in full armor with weapons clanging. And that's without arrows raining down. Well springs, rivers, and lakes weren't only vital for drinking and cleaning. They created formidable natural barriers, moats you didn't have to dig. Nobody relished the thought of their home reeking from lack of fresh water. Not only was cleanliness a matter of comfort, but health and morale as well. Archaeologists have recently unearthed staggering evidence of advanced water storage. Entire chambers beneath castles that could nurture a population for seasons at a time, if besieged. Connection to trade routes and thoroughfares was another crucial factor. Building a castle near the medieval equivalent of a highway ensured a steady flow of essentials: grain, weapons, lumber, all the lifeblood of fortress life. It mirrored the growth of modern cities at crossroads and rail lines, except deliveries arrived by ox cart rather than delivery truck. Sometimes, the ideal castle site wasn't empty land. It was someone's long-settled home. Imagine a royal messenger delivering the decree: "Apologies, but the king desires this hill for his fortress." Entire towns could be uprooted, with thousands shunted aside in the name of royal necessity. Families, churches, and communities pushed aside so a monarch could stamp his authority on the landscape. Records recount villages and even churches swept away, leaving those displaced with token compensations, like new land, tax holidays, or the promise of work within castle walls. Of course, these exchanges often felt like poor trade-offs. Some rulers, with a mind for propaganda, would plant their castles atop battlefields or sacred ground, proclaiming their legitimacy with displays of power and reverence. Others picked places thick with legend or old superstition, letting the very earth exude a warning to would-be foes. From time to time, the best site was uninviting to the untrained eye, swamps or sheer cliffs overlooked by most. Yet these obstacles stymied siege engines and attackers alike. One famous fortress sat with 3 of its sides encircled by precipices, making a fence a fool's errand. Other sites exploited celestial patterns. The sun arranged to shine through certain chambers on holy days or royal birthdays, an echo of cosmic favor. And after all that, choosing the site, clearing the land, the Herculean task of gathering materials began. Imagine summoning the stones needed for these astounding foundations before trucks, cranes, or even smooth roads existed. For a mid-sized castle, builders required 12,000 tons of stone, the weight of several herds of elephants. The greatest strongholds could contain the mass of a small mountain. Some blocks, weighing as much as modern automobiles, were lugged for miles, sometimes over temporary log roads, each plank laid and replaced in turn, the precursor to highway maintenance. Oxen served as earthy engines of medieval transport, trudging along at little more than a crawl, 2 miles an hour, dragging 2-ton stones. Hauling loads from distant quarries could become a years-long affair, requiring hundreds of animals and workers. If a river lay handy, stones could be floated downstream like primitive shipping containers, far preferable if fortune smiled. But stone was only the beginning. Timber was devoured in vast quantities for scaffolding, roofs, bracing, and formwork. Castles that rose from the ground often devastated entire forests, a footprint in the woodland with effects still felt centuries on. Some kings went so far as to guard their forests with harsh laws. Poaching wood could land you in chains or worse. Skilled workers, too, were a must. Master masons were cherished and courted, sometimes commanding rewards as grand as exclusive rights to fine vineyards. Construction swelled with laborers, stonemasons, carpenters, blacksmiths, hoisting, cutting, hauling. Rope makers toiled endlessly, fashioning cords strong enough to suspend blocks weighing tons. A major build could consume enough cordage to reach from London to Paris. Iron, precious as silver at times, was hammered into tens of thousands of hinges, fittings, and nails. Even small flaws in materials could bring disaster, so medieval builders inspected their resources minutely, sometimes testing stones with nothing more sophisticated than a lick of the tongue. Materials had to be shielded from weather, stashed in makeshift warehouses as substantial as the castles themselves. The logistical puzzle would easily humble a modern project manager. At last, after all this assembly, the groundwork could begin, quite literally. Foundations delved down into the earth, sometimes to bedrock 40 or 60 feet below, a feet deeper than most modern houses are tall. Trenches were filled with more than raw stone. Mortar, crafted from lime and sand, formed the glue. Various recipes existed, some as bizarre as mixing in blood, eggs, or beer for extra strength, a brew only medieval alchemy could imagine. Builders carved stepped bases, pyramid-shaped, inverted into the ground, distributing immense burdens evenly across the earth. Curiosities have since been revealed below these ancient castles. Chicken bones arranged for luck, coins, religious objects, even the occasional misplaced hammer or, so the stories go, a forgotten worker's lunch. The utmost precision was needed. A misalignment at the base meant the entire castle could tilt or crumble. The thickest foundations spanned as wide as a modern home, layered inside with rubble and debris surrounded by tightly set stones for maximum durability. Temperature played its role as well. Mortar spoiled if dried too quickly by heat, or would not set in cold, so builders contrived solutions, working at night, blanketing fresh work with straw, or even fanning mortar dry. Some projects demanded walls go up in continuous shifts, teams passing stones in coordinated relays that hummed with human chains, whistles, and drum beats. The result? Foundations that have survived centuries, sometimes still supporting new structures today. A testament to an artistry that even now inspires awe. Medieval manuals laid out instructions for future repairs, and workers left their marks. Some literal, carving dragons or cats into the stone as signatures of pride. With the stage set, stones spiraled upward into walls whose thickness and tallness dwarf modern expectations. Walls that could shrug off siege engines and stand for generations. Builders layered cut stones with rubble, each course placed for stability. The outer faces fit tightly together, harder than a knife's edge to pry apart. The inner layer braced by rough stones and every bit of leftover debris imaginable. Broken tools, crockery, even remnants of lunch. Moving the mighty blocks upward required invention. Human-powered cranes called windlasses lifted stones to dizzying heights, sometimes with crews marching inside wooden wheels like oversized hamsters. The walls themselves sloped inward, not for carelessness, but to rebuff missiles and give the structure resilience. Secret corridors crisscrossed through the structure for supplies, escape, or covert surveillance. So labyrinthine were some fortresses that even guards could lose themselves in their winding halls. Marks of craftsmen endure on the stones, a record of thousands of hands. Temperature and daylight posed their own puzzles. Building schedules were finely tuned, work proceeding only at the right hours to safeguard mortar from sun or frost. Cornerstones, vital to the wall's integrity, were so meticulously hewn that kings might order them brought from remote quarries, cut to such fineness that their accuracy still rivals machine work today. Even the scaffolding for castle construction left traces. Holes, called putlog holes, punched through the walls to support platforms and ladders, left as lasting fixtures for future repairs. Defensive features studded every wall. Arrow slits, clever in their widening on the inside to give archers freedom to fire while exposing as little of themselves as possible. Modern reconstructions have shown some could cover an arc of 70 degrees, remarkable for such a narrow target. But the castle's silhouette was incomplete without its towers and mighty gatehouses, the ultimate statement of medieval security. Towers rose to dizzying heights, sometimes round to better absorb and deflect enemy bombardment. Some strongholds built stages of their towers, setting each tier before raising the next, their walls thicker than city dwellings. Spiral staircases wound clockwise, a subtle defense, forcing right-handed attackers to hold their swords awkwardly, while defenders wielded theirs with ease. Some staircases hid deliberate traps, steps of unequal height, placed to trip the unwary, with evidence of years of falls etched into the stone. The gateway was every castle's nerve center, a fortress within a fortress. Barricaded with drawbridges and heavy, grooved grates called portcullises, attackers could be herded into killing zones, then bombarded from above through hidden holes with stones, arrows, boiling water, or even beehives. The original crowd control. Some gatehouses even decoyed with false entries, leading invaders to dead ends and traps. Lookouts watched from the highest towers, using horns and bells to alarm the inhabitants, each signal a different warning, from hostile armies to daring thieves or tax collectors. The highest posts could spot invaders from miles away, granting precious time to prepare. Some towers channeled sound, giving even earlier warning as hooves thundered in the distance. For all these imposing defenses, castle designers knew walls alone weren't enough. The keep, massive, stark, and inner redoubt, stood as the last sanctuary if all else fell. Its entrance, often high above ground, could only be reached by retractable stairs. Windows barely wider than an arrow slit let in meager light. Life in the keep was rigorous. Candles were consumed in staggering quantities. Their holders, called chandlers, ensured the halls didn't descend into pitch darkness. Stores were stockpiled for months-long sieges, with expertly designed granaries sometimes keeping supplies fresh for centuries. To meet basic needs, clever plumbing vented waste far outside, maintained by workers whose unpleasant duties earned them both payment and an extra ration of spirits. Each floor of the keep served a purpose. Storage below, the grand hall in the middle, and royal quarters above. Some included ventilation ducts to whisk away sour air. Water was drawn from wells that sometimes went deeper than modern skyscrapers are tall. The placement of these wells was so exact that historians still marvel at how the builders could have found water without advanced surveying tools. For security, keeps often included sally ports, hidden tunnels snaking out beneath the walls, allowing defenders to sortie out or, at the very least, attempt a desperate last escape. Yet a castle's anatomy was incomplete without a garrison to defend and inhabit it. The finest walls and cleverest designs meant little without disciplined, tireless soldiers. Living quarters were cramped, with many men bedding down in shifts, squeezed tighter than sacks of grain. Training was relentless. Archers, in particular, were legally obligated to practice regularly, building up prodigious strength in their arms. Surviving bows and skeletons alike confirmed their legendary prowess. Crossbows, once introduced, changed the battlefield. A peasant could learn to use one in weeks instead of years. They became so deadly and widespread that both church and kings tried to curb their use, naming them too lethal for proper Christian warfare. Defenders wielded a panoply of creative weapons: spiked caltrops scattered on the ground to cripple attacking horses, springalds designed to launch giant bolts, horncalls to marshal the ranks. Feeding the defenders during a siege demanded rigorous planning. Cellars brimmed with grain, salted meat, and whatever could be preserved, sometimes enough for many months. As rations dwindled in the longest sieges, even leather and tapestries could be converted into meals of desperation. Some defenders took on eccentric roles. One would circle the perimeter on a pony seeking breaches. Another was tasked with handling early warning fires or signals, not actual dragons, alas, though the name survived. Guards braced themselves through long, cold nights with spiced wine, or by carrying heavy stones as punishment for dozing off. Battle readiness depended as much on coordination as on courage. Medieval manuals outlined dozens of horn blasts and flag signals for every contingency, inventing their own form of multi-factor authentication with secret knocks and passwords for access. Despite ingenuity, even these marvels of stone and discipline could eventually be eclipsed. Cannon fire and gunpowder would alter the world. In mere hours, once impregnable walls might crumple under the new innovation, heralding the end of an age. As we reflect on such astonishing efforts, on the ambition, resourcefulness, and endurance pressed into every stone and story, I'd love to know, where are you listening from right now? And at what hour are you joining this journey through time? Knowing how and when this story finds you matters deeply, not just to me, but to our whole community of curious minds traveling across centuries together. If the spirit of this adventure resonates with you, if you cherish the mysteries, struggles, and breakthroughs of the medieval world, I invite you to be part of this growing circle. Feel free to share your thoughts or questions below. Your voice adds to this living tapestry. And if you wish to hear more stories born from the stones of history, consider subscribing. Together, let's keep these echoes alive.